welcome, welcome. Please continue to uh, share in the chat. We're going to go ahead and get started. Grace, can you hear me? I'm freezing up a little bit, but can you still hear me on my end? Okay. I want to go ahead and get started so that we have time for Q&A. This is only a 30-minute call, so we're going to move through some things, just some overview things a little quickly, just to get to the meat of this conversation. So first, official welcome. Thank you all for joining us for this Q&A webinar. My name is Melody Evans. I'm the Vice President of People and Operations here at Catalyst Ed. I've been with Catalyst Ed for about 5 years now. One of the teams I oversee is the network engagement team. You'll be hearing from Grace primarily today, who is really the brains behind this operation in terms of making sure we have a new structured selection process and one that runs as smoothly as possible. So as you go through the process, we'll also be looking for your feedback so that we can continue to adjust and refine our process. So our agenda for today, really simple. First, I'm just going to share a little bit about Catalyst Ed and who we are, and then Grace is going to jump into what is selection, what does it include, what are the selection criteria, and she's going to give a few tips and tricks on how to optimize your application. And then we will jump into Q&A, but if questions come up, please share them in the chat. I think we have a Q&A. We actually have a Q&A button so that you can, if you want to share things there, that's probably the best option. That way we make sure we see it with so many folks in the room. So I'll just jump into a little bit about Catalyst Ed and who we are. So at the heart of who we are a mission-driven organization, of course, that helps education and social impact organization build capacity and deepen their impact by connecting them to equity-oriented resources, expertise, and hands-on support. And that is where our provider network really comes in, connecting organizations who need that support to providers like you who have the deep expertise, are proximate to the to the communities and understand those challenges because of the work and experiences that you've had. So this is really what we care about doing, is making sure we're helping organizations get the impact they need in order to serve students and families well. And you can see on this screen, these are pretty much like our tenets and our values at Catalyst Ed. Capacity building fuels world-changing work. Lots of organizations really just need support to do their work well and meet the meet the challenges head on that they're facing in their communities. Individualized support is necessary, yet collective learning is possible. You all work individually in terms of supporting organizations, but there's so much that can be learned from you, either working together, sharing what you've learned, sharing experiences. The point of this is also to make sure that we're collectively learning as a sector and how to move education and social sector initiatives forward. Equity is our compass. You will hear that a lot. We're an equity-oriented organization, and we want to make sure that the folks we bring into the network also have those same values around equity. And then there is no progress without trust. We believe that building trust is a part of growing our relationships and how we communicate and connect with other people. So we also do care about the relationships we build with you, but also the ones you build with the organizations that you're serving. We care about the work and the impact of the work, but also how it gets done as well. So just a few tenets of Catalyst Ed. There's so much more on our website. And if you want to schedule a call, talk about what we do, those types of things, we're always open to that. But I'm going to throw it over to Grace to get into the meat of selection.
Hey, y'all. It's nice to meet you. I'm sure that I've had calls with some of you. I've emailed a lot of you as well. My name is Grace Fry. I am our network engagement manager here at Catalyst Ed. So if you've heard about selection, if you've heard about our provider network, you've maybe heard my name. If not, it's great to meet you. So Mel just gave us a really great rundown of Catalyst Ed. Now I'm going to take us a little bit into the, let's say, meat and potatoes of what is selection. So first, I want to ground ourselves in why we have a selection process. It's not about gatekeeping. It's not about closing the doors. Rather, it's to ensure that our network has the talent needed to successfully serve our partner organizations. So you see a lot of words on this screen, but I'm going to walk us through each step just to get a little bit more nitty gritty. So selection is integral to our mission. It ensures we connect partners with providers who can drive impact, innovation, and equity. You'll hear that throughout the entire conversation and also through all of our selection materials, but equity is really central to what we do, central to who we are and how we build our network. Selection supports those that we serve, meaning that we use selection to vet providers for the expertise and alignment needed to help organizations become more effective, equitable, and sustainable. So we use the selection process to get to know our network, to get to know who you are, your business, what you bring to the table, what expertise you've had over your career, and how you use that in your partnerships and how you build those relationships. And then for the first time ever, we're taking an evergreen approach with our selection process. So up until now, selection has been lengthy, it's been infrequent. I know there are people on this call who have been emailing me since 2021 asking for our next selection time. And so that's why we've moved into this new evergreen approach. With the new system, we're inviting consultants with any competency expertise to apply to join the network when you're ready for it. So instead of forcing you to apply earlier just to meet a time frame or feeling the kind of urgency around it, we're opening it up so that you can do this on a rolling basis. That allows you to join and refer peers at any time. It also allows us to continuously select providers who meet our mission and serve our partners' evolving needs. So as we learn what our partner organizations are doing with their projects, as we learn where the sectors are going, that's also going to be impactful and helpful information for our provider network. So that's a little bit about kind of why we do selection, but now let's talk about what selection actually is, and let's go through the roadmap. So there are a couple different steps that it'll take to join the Catalyst Ed network. The first is the online application form. That is what launched last Tuesday, the 24th. If you've had a chance to take a look at that, that's great. If not, you're going to have plenty of time to look at it and talk about it after this call. But first is the application form. In that form, you'll give us your background, you'll select your competency areas, you'll identify your main sectors, you'll talk about your consulting experience, you'll share your references with us, and you'll answer a few short answer questions. Step 2 is going to be our reference survey. So each of your professional references will receive a link to complete a reference survey on your behalf. We really do recommend that you make sure your references know and expect that email is coming, and you let us know if they haven't received it. Sometimes an email gets filled in wrong. Sometimes the reference is out of office and doesn't realize something's coming their way. But these references should be able to vouch for both your experience in competency areas as well as sectors. We're also going to ask them to speak to your relationship building and your client management. After you submit your application and those references, you'll receive step 3, which is a recorded interview. This is your opportunity to let your personality shine and to really speak to your expertise. There are going to be 5 questions on this interview. You'll have about 2 minutes to answer each of them, and we'll let you have a retake as well. So the whole process shouldn't take more than 25 minutes, but you need to complete that interview in order for your application to be considered ready for review. So sometimes people ask us, is that interview after I've already read through your application? No, we consider that as part of your application. So once you've completed the form, once your references are completed, and once you've done your interview, that is when your application will be marked for review and sent to our review team. And our team will take each component of your application and make a decision regarding acceptance to the network, verified competencies, and approved sectors. Once that application moves forward to review, and you'll get an email when that happens so that you are up to date through every step of the process, you should receive a decision within a few weeks after the application is considered complete. So we like to get that decision to you in 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes it'll go a little bit quicker if you're applying to what we consider one of our priority competency areas. Sometimes it'll take a extra week if it took a little bit for those references to get completed. So if you have questions at any point during that process, if you don't see something come through or you expect to see an email come through, you can always reach out to us and we can check in and see the status of your application. So now let's talk about, we talked about what is selection. We've talked about what are the steps of selection. Now let's talk about who we're looking for. So we seek consultants with deep expertise and a demonstrated commitment to equity. Applicants are expected to showcase a strong track record in their respective fields, emphasizing delivering outcomes that advance equitable opportunities. So that's a lot. That's a jumbled up mix of buzz terms. But really, what we're looking for is we want to see consultants with a deep expertise and really demonstrated commitment to equity. So we should see that equity is running through your practice, running through how you approach your clients, how you build your projects. You don't have to be a DEI consultant to have an equity lens in how you approach your work. Another thing that we want to talk about is the type of provider that joins our network. So typically, providers will fall into one of three categories. So we see individuals who run your own business. So that's you and no other full-time employees. We see small businesses with multiple consultants who work on projects. So that might mean that you're the executive director or the leader or a lead consultant applying on behalf of your organization, but that's going to be an org that has more than 2 full-time employees. We see part-time consultants, so that you may have another full-time job and you moonlight on the side. For those part-time consultants, we do require that you have 20 hours available per month to work on consulting projects, and also approval from your full-time employer. So we don't want to run into any issues on your or create any problems for you there. And then the last style of consultant we see in our network is sometimes we see a consortium of consultants who each run their own practice but collaborate on projects together. So when you're looking at that online application, you'll actually see all of those options, and you'll be able to get really nitty-gritty about how you would like to join the network and how you want to show up there. And then the last thing we're looking for is we're looking for people who are interested in community involvement and network engagement. So we know that consulting can be a kind of lonely experience. A lot of the people on our Catalyst Ed team actually started as consultants or have freelanced at some point in our careers. So we understand that it's a really big shift. That's why we have this network. We encourage collaboration with our providers. We have opportunities to build a community through the network. We have and a few of the ways we do that is an exclusive online community platform for providers to find projects, to share opportunities, to connect with one another. We run provider resource groups. So if you've ever worked somewhere that had an employee resource group, then you know what a provider resource group is. It's a group that's run by our providers dedicated to a particular topic around professional development, running your business, DEI, things like that. We also have different community calls on a quarterly basis and different pilots that we're running at all times. So we're really looking for consultants who are interested in growing their network, growing their business, and finding ways to collaborate as well. So that, again, we're moving fast here. We've got a little bit of time, but before we get to Q&A, I want to touch on some of our required criteria so that you have an understanding when you go into your application of what it is that you need. So a required question for us is we're looking for at least 5 years of professional experience, 2 years in each selected sector. So when you apply for education or nonprofit, we want to see that you've had 2 years in both of those. We're going to ask you to agree to our provider guiding principles. All of that is linked in the application so you can read it thoroughly. And it's just the principles that we follow as a provider network, how we treat each other, how we treat the network, how we treat our clients, things like that. We're going to ask you some pretty direct equity and decision-making questions. Those are going to be considered required criteria. And we're also going to look for a values alignment. So I know Mel laid out Catalyst Ed values at the top of this. We want to see how your business and how your work aligns with that as well. And then I want to talk about what you apply for. So one, you're applying to join the network, but you're also going to be prompted to answer a couple really specific things. One of those is going to be your competency areas. The other one is going to be your sectors. So like I mentioned before, we do have what we call priority competency areas. These are areas that are high priority for our partner organizations right now. When you select one of those, that means that your application will be reviewed a little bit quicker, but it won't change the vetting process or the rigor that goes that the reviewer will go through there. So right now, our priority competency areas are going to be revenue generation, technology and data, and communications and advocacy. We've also introduced a couple new competencies with this round of Evergreen selection. So if you look at our competency map, you'll see community planning is new in our strategic planning and implementation. Competency youth and family mobilization is new in SEL. Public financing is new in revenue generation, and then policy and advocacy have been split out into their own competencies under that communications and advocacy area as well. And then the last thing that you're going to apply for is sectors. So up to this point, we've worked almost exclusively with the education sector, but we are now introducing an opportunity for nonprofit work and place-based partnerships. Now, place-based partnerships is a new area for us as well. It might sound a little new to you too, but the way that we like to think of it and what we like to tell our network is that mostly the work is going to look the same, but the language and the way that people talk about those place-based partnership projects is going to be a little bit different. And oftentimes there's a stronger emphasis on relationship management, collaboration, and working within communities. You can apply for up to 3 competency areas, but you may receive verification in 1, 2, or 3. And you may apply for all 3 of our sectors, but again, you may only receive verification in 1, 2, or 3. Okay, we're so close, y'all. We're very close to a Q&A. But before we get there, I want to give you some tips. I want to tell you how you can optimize your application. The first thing that I want you to know is that you should really focus on the competency areas that are aligned with the work that you do. So there may be sometimes when you're looking at our competency areas, it may look like there are some that are bigger ticket or have more opportunities that align with them, but aren't really necessarily what you spend your day doing. So with that, we would recommend that you really pick the competency areas that go along with the work that you do rather than where you think there might be more projects. I know that sounds a little obvious, but that is something that we get asked a lot about. So I would say really keep it tight on the work that you do. The next is that there are going to be several questions in our application that are 2-part questions. Answer both parts of them. You don't want to be removed from the review process or get a low score on an answer that you answered really well, but you only answered the first part. The way that our rubrics are built, we are going to be looking for an answer to both parts of a 2-part question. Number 3 is don't virtue signal. So we ask a pretty straightforward equity question, and we want you to look at the equity pillars that we have set out, our equity impact statement, and we want you to read through that and get really critical and think, how does my work align with this? What pillar am I really drawn to? We want you to answer this question thoroughly in a way that is true to your work. We don't want to hear you trying to talk the talk, but then you don't have the expertise or the background to walk the walk. So again, really spend some time, take a moment, think through your answer, and make sure that it is really connected to you, your work, and how you try to incorporate equity in what you do. The next one is make sure that your references know that you are sending them something and that you have the correct info for them. We get a lot of reference email bounces, which means that it was sent to the wrong email or a no longer active email, or a reference reaching out and saying, I don't know why I've received this, or I haven't talked to this person in a few years. I would just say let your references know. Make sure that they can expect to see an email from Catalyst Ed, and also let them know that your application is counting on that reference. So if someone sees it in their inbox and lets it sit for a month, then that means your application has spent a month of not being reviewed. And then the last one I want to talk about is your work samples. So we are going to ask you to submit work samples for each of your selected competency areas. And we want to make sure that these work samples are really strongly aligned and demonstrate your chosen competency. So they should be clear, well organized, and visually compelling or interesting. And the type of work sample can be relevant to the work that you do or the audiences that you support. So a few examples might be a case study that you authored and shows your expertise and the impact. A final client presentation that shows the engagement from beginning to end, that might have context, deliverables, outcomes. Maybe you just have deliverables that you left with a client that are a really good example of your work, or a news clip or a reel or a press release if you are a marketing and communications professional. If you work on website building, send in some client websites. If you have an annual report or an organizational newsletter, there's a lot of different ways that you can show the work that you've done. If you need to redact info, talk to your client or find another sample. You all have a lot of great work. You all know how to talk about yourself. Make sure that when we look at your work samples, we can get that and take that away. And then lastly, we encourage you to read through our FAQs and other online resources. So we've got a lot of information and guidance online that should be able to answer most of your questions. If you have any other questions, you can always reach out to us at selection@catalysted.org, but we do recommend taking a look at those FAQs and resources first. Let's talk questions, y'all. Okay, I'm seeing one that's come in, says, any advice for applying on behalf of a consortium? So there's a couple different thoughts there. One is that you might consider each individual joining the network, so each of you applying and then collaborating once you're in the network. We do require when you're applying on behalf that one of you then becomes kind of the main point of contact. So if you apply, then you would be the person in our system. You'd be the person who's receiving the emails from us. And then you can add team members to that group. But sometimes we do actually see that consortiums join and then realize that each individual might like to join as their own entity as well. If we're part of a team, should we or could we, the team, record the interview together? Yeah, you could. I will let you know you get 2 minutes for each answer. And you get about a minute of prep time for each question. So it might make sense if you have, the 4 or 5 of you lined up, each one of you take a question, or the 2 of you take one question and the next 2 take the next question. We would never discourage you from doing it as a team. We have also seen the CEO of a team or the executive director decide to take the interview on their own and speak on behalf of the team. So you could do it either way, but the main thing that you should be aware of is that time constraint, because at that 2 minutes, the answer is going to be cut off. In your experience, what were a few reasons providers were not selected? So we have a couple of different things that show up. One of those is going to be a lack of expertise in their selected competency area. So when you select a competency area and then you submit a work sample that isn't relevant or doesn't make a lot of sense, or shows kind of an elementary understanding of the competency area, that's going to count against you. If you select a sector and then tell us that you only have kind of a mid to low understanding of it, that's going to count against you. If you are unable to show us your personal commitment to equity in the way that equity shows up in the work that you do, that's going to be a required criteria or a knockout question for us as well. But we tend to see people who have fewer than 20 hours available, people who have fewer than 5 years of expertise or work experience, and then people who select competency areas that are not relevant to what they do, or they have a hard time showing the work that they did in that. Do you receive the interview questions in advance? No, you do not receive the interview questions in advance. It's a recorded interview, but it does simulate an interview setting. So what you'll do is you'll receive the question, you'll get a minute of prep time, and then you'll get 2 minutes to record your answer and 1 2-minute do-over if you want, and you'll get that for each question. Right now, we are not capping how many consultants we're bringing into the network this time. So you can apply and also refer out to peers as you see fit. We ask for at least one case study. So the question is, how many case studies / work samples can we submit to demonstrate expertise? We're going to ask for at least one case study per competency area. It's a document upload though, so you will be able to add a couple if you feel it necessary, but we'll ask you to be concise where you can and limit it to 1 per competency area. I didn't see an option to get a copy of our application once it's submitted. Is that possible? Yeah, that's absolutely possible. If you reach out to Selection @, we can definitely make sure. And then I will also get with our tech team and see if we can turn that option on so that you won't have to reach out to us in the future. But for right now, once you submit, please feel free to reach out and I will get you a copy of that application. Jennifer, how do organizations become a part of Catalyst Ed and its support network? Do you mean providers, so our provider network, or do you mean our partner organizations, the people who like our clients that we do support, that we connect with our providers.
The latter, yeah, the organizations that you provide support to. Thank you.
Totally. Yeah, of course. There are a couple different ways that partner organizations become connected to Catalyst Ed. The most straightforward is that someone is looking for capacity advising or short-term talent, and they Google it and they find Catalyst Ed and they submit a scope request. We also have a lot of different partnerships with funders, and we run different things called exchanges and expert hubs. So an exchange is a relationship that we have with an organization that says, here is my group of grantees or investees. We're focusing on X, Y, and Z, and we want to give this group an extra support. We want to connect them with a capacity advisor, and then we want to connect them with capacity building support. So that's going to be a provider in our network. So that group of grantees will then be matched over with our programs team. Our programs team is going to sit down and talk to them, understand their problem, write up a scope, take that RFP and shop it out to the provider network. So we work with a lot of different organizations, the Oak Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, New Schools Venture Fund has been a partner of ours for a long time. And that is that's a pretty large base for us so that we bring in clients. The other one that I mentioned is going to be those expert hubs. So those are those are kind of communities of practice that are focused specifically on a special area. So a DEI expert hub, an after school expert hub, and then all of the projects that come from those expert hubs are going to be very, very focused on that competency area and solving problems within that area. Fiona, how should we fill out the online application if we're part of a team applying? The questions on the online application seem tailored for one individual to fill it out. That's helpful feedback. I really appreciate that. Typically, we see a CEO, an executive director, or a lead consultant fill that out. So filling that out on behalf of the organization, but from that perspective of someone who is in the field on a regular basis and leading projects for your organization. If you're selected into the network, how likely are you to be matched to projects in the future? Can you talk about the benefits of being in the network as far as ROI? Yeah, absolutely. So I don't necessarily have a number for you today on what the likelihood of being matched to, but I can talk a little bit about the data and the numbers behind our network. So each year we post around between 200 to 300 projects, but with our partnerships, our new partnerships that have come in this year, we do expect that number to go up significantly. Right now, it's going to depend more on what your primary competency areas are and where we're matching projects. So for example, our top competency areas in the last year for projects was strategic planning and implementation, revenue generation, and communications and advocacy. But our top area for our expertise in our network is strategic planning, which is great alignment there. But actually our second to lowest group is revenue generation. So in the past year, our revenue generation providers saw a lot more business than they had in the years before, because that became a really heavy area for our partner organizations and for our funding partners. So I think a lot of that's going to depend on what's going on in the sector and where your expertise lie. I think there are also benefits to joining the network that are independent of project matching. So if you are looking for networking, if you are looking for opportunities outside of the network, so a lot of our providers bring in opportunities that they've seen either from organizations they work with, or people have reached out to them and they don't have capacity. So there's a lot of kind of information sharing within our network. So providers who find a lot of benefit in connecting with each other in that way. We also, like I said, a lot of providers find a lot of value in the community. So in those community calls, in the professional development that we offer, in the provider resource groups as well. So I know that doesn't get exactly to what you're asking, and I know we're a little light on data there, but I hope that's a little bit more of a peek behind the curtain. Mel, are you still on the call? I think that I definitely see some questions in here that are a little bit outside my scope, particularly Tanya, your questions around payroll and insurance. So Mel, if you have thoughts there, I think that might be helpful.
Sorry, I think I missed that one. Yeah, I'll take, where is it?
I can just read it out. It says, do you need to submit payroll information for current or previous year? And is there a minimum insurance requirement greater than 3 million? 3 MM?
No, we don't have any insurance requirements, and if and if there are any requirements when it on behalf of the organization, they will share that with you. But we don't have any minimum requirements there. I know there were lots of questions around applying as an organization versus not. There are also a couple of questions around what competencies we're looking for or where we see gaps. And I know that Grace spoke about that in terms of priority areas, which right now are revenue generation, data, and communication and advocacy. So just wanted to rename that question. Can you please answer the payroll? What was the payroll question? And then unfortunately, I do have to hop. Tanya, if you want to come off, if I didn't answer it, please let me know. Tanya, if you want to come off in terms of, do you need to submit payroll information for your current or previous year? No. You are very welcome.
Awesome. I saw one more question that I think might be helpful here. Is there a way, Thomas, is there a way to provide a link or links to my past work? I noticed on the application, there's only a way to upload a file. Right now, what I would recommend is like making a Google Doc, putting the links on it, and then converting to PDF and uploading that. I can definitely take that feedback back to our team and see if there's a way to improve that process. But for now, I would say definitely feel free to share links. Just do it on a PDF or get one of those plugins on your computer where you can take screenshots of the full page, if that would be helpful as well. But we don't want to miss that. We don't want to miss that information. We don't want to miss that reference, or excuse me, that work sample. So definitely, definitely submit it. And if you have more questions, reach out to Selection at. Awesome. Well, we are about 5 minutes over. I know there are questions we didn't get to. If you have those questions or feel like we didn't answer them for you or didn't get kind of meaty enough for you, please reach out to selection@catalyst-ed.org. That goes to me, that goes to Mel, that also goes to 2 other team members. So it will be seen by several eyes. Those are questions particularly related to the selection process or the application. If you have general questions about Catalyst Ed, if you listened to this and thought, actually, I want to list a project with us, definitely reach out to us at info@catalyst.ed. That also gets my eyes on it. So all of these are coming to my inbox and you will hear from us. But with any questions, please let us know. We want to be as helpful as possible. We'd love to see your applications come through, and we want to make sure that this is a smooth, equitable, and transparent process for you as well. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I know it's been a quick 30 minutes, but it was great to see y'all.